Hello, everybody. Peter Pop Art is back, and we are going to be moving forward with adding a little bit of very simple rendering to our character. Now, the very first thing I've done is added a clipping layer to the main part of the costume, which we went over in the previous videos. So, with the clipping layer already created, I'm taking the eyedropper tool and I'm selecting the base color and now selecting a lighter color. Now a very basic, simple brush. And what I'm going to do is start pulling out highlights on our character's costume. I'm really using all the shadowing that we did and the shading that we did on the costume kind of as a platform or a point of reference, so I know exactly kind of where I need to pull some of the highlights for. Excuse me. And this is a very, very simple process. I'm not doing any real rendering for this in terms of gradient tones and building up multiple layers and depths of color. Really, I'm going to just keep this to about two to three basic shades, which will be the base color, which is our basic costume that we did previously. Now the highlights, and then an additional one in some areas. So right now, all I'm doing is I'm digging in and I am just very simply picking and pulling every area that I feel a highlight needs to be had. Normally I would have started with the skin tone, but I wanted to kind of set the pace with the costume. Everything really revolves around that base color. And now that we're working with a slightly darker color, it's going to be it's a balancing act to make sure that it's visible, but it doesn't blend in too much with all the shading that we did. So basically, this needs to be a very subtle thing that doesn't necessarily grab you right away, but subconsciously you know it's there, and it really adds to the illusion that we're trying to create through our art. This part over here, this was a wee bit of a boo-boo, so don't worry about any of that. Um, so we're still adding in and dropping in some of those darkened areas, going around the muscle groups, which were previously previously defined in our pencil stage and our inking stage. So, this really is kind of like coloring book stuff, but it adds so much depth. Now with the cape, and I do have to find, the proper layers because I didn't necessarily label everything 100% the way I normally do. With the cape, what I want to do is, create another clipping mask and really just make sure that it has the illusion that it has a proper shape to it. We want to make sure that we add to the effect and to the illusion of that we did on our base costume. And the reason is everything has to work together. It's got to mesh together. Yet again, this really is a very simple process of coloring, but I find that it is very effective on some projects. So, and for a basic, drawing tutorial for kids, I think this one is absolutely perfect to handle the approach with in the coloring. Now over here I'm adding a little bit of the darker colors, but I'm not feeling it. So, I'm just going to keep moving on and keep kind of poking and prodding to make sure that I get the desired effect. As you just saw, I make mistakes in my work, so I just remove them if I don't like them. Sometimes a lot of the rendering doesn't even need to be huge to add elements to make it effective. Everybody thinks that you have to overwork every single aspect. It really doesn't. You just need a bit of an impressionistic touch to get your point across a lot of the times, and that's really all that you do need. But yet again, it depends on the work that you're doing. So over here for the highlights in the gold, um, everything is laid within such a dark color that it only makes sense to really accentuate and bring out the depth of the color of the gold. So I'm hitting everything in a darker area between, sorry, I'm moving around in my seat. For the chest area, the belt buckle, and now the boots. And the boots are very predominant with all the shading in there, which we're going to have to go in there and address later on. Now with the highlights, we're just adding to the shape using the highlights yet again that were previously done, all the black areas, as basically, our template. We know that we need to work with that area. That's why we previously defined it in the line art. I'm going to have a little bit of coffee. Excuse me. So I hope everybody's been having some fun during their lockdown and, social distancing stuff. So over here, we are going back into like the V's on the belt buckle and on the chest, just pulling out a little bit of a white highlight just to give it a little bit of a shine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another clipping mask onto the trunks, which are very, very dark. They're very rich with dark color. And for what I'm going to do here is going to be really subtle. I'm going to go kind of halfway up the color scheme, just lightly pulling out little bits of color, just to make it a little bit brighter. When everything is all said and done, it'll help pull everything together nicely. But you'll notice I'm not going crazy adding, tons of rendering. The drawing didn't require it. It was strong enough on its own, and it plays very well with this style of coloring. So now I'm going to go into the skin, and this is going to definitely have 3 shades of color. The base color, the highlight, which is what I'm adding first, going over the areas of the face, adding details to everything that kind of sticks out that should catch some of the coloring area. Now I'm going to dive in on the face and add some of the dark, and then I'm going to go back in and do the same process for the hands. But yet again, I'm just building upon this image and using all the defined line art to help me create this illusion and this effect, to just give everything a little bit of subtle shape. Going in, understanding the planes of the head, the shapes of the chin and the lips. Now with the hands, we're going to have to go in and reselect the lighter color. Make sure that we do it on the proper layer. And just add little subtle touches, little baby bits, just so you know that it has the shapes that we're defining in the line art. Adding to the knuckles, the fingers. Then we're going to have to go in now and add some of the shadowing area, some of the darker areas. Just little touches. Now, you'll learn how to do the little touches the more you do, the more you study, the more you practice, looking at other people's work. And you can look at work in every different genre. It does not have to just be a comic style. Look at real paintings. Look at what they do, how they do it. So now we're going to hit the hair with some color. Yet again, create the clipping mask, go off of our base color, zoom in a little bit so you can see what's going on, and then go in and just start adding some shape and pulling out some of the darker areas of the hair. This way it has a little bit of depth. And now we're going to go in and add some lighter areas and adjust our brush size, because remember, your hair is, very fine, and the idea is to give it some sort of uniformity, but still also acknowledge the fact that it has this flowing shape to it. So for the most part, that feels pretty good. Now, this is kind of the trickiest part, which is to make sure that the reflections look right. And all I'm doing is I'm just making sure I'm working on the proper layers, and I'm pulling the right colors. Um, that's the hardest part. And I'm doing all these colors on the fly. I did not do any of the colors previously selected because I wanted everything to have, at this point, we had to previously select our base colors, but at this point I wanted everything to kind of have more of an organic feel in terms of everything kind of going together smoothly and show you the process of how I kind of pick and pull at everything. And then deciding that, maybe kind of the direction I'm going doesn't work. Maybe I need to adjust it. There's nothing wrong with that. Making sure I correct the layers that I'm actually working on. That's why it's really super important for you to make sure you label all your layers if you're working digitally. If you're working on paper and pencil, you might have to do it a little bit differently. So we are getting super duper close to being finished with this. And now when you're adding the highlights at this point, trying to push and pull out the boots, you're getting super close to being done. All of this stuff is just to give everything just a little bit more shape. And I decided that the color of the floor did not work well for this at all. So I really wanted to give it a darker shape. And I'm still not 100% sold on it, but for the demonstration purpose, it does work. But I feel that there needs to be something behind our hero. So for this stage, what I'm doing is I'm just adding a circle. And the easiest way to do a perfect circle is to hold the shift button while you're dragging and dropping your ellipse, and then releasing your button and then releasing the shift. You'll get the proper size, the proper scale. And you'll notice I didn't color the eyes, but whatever, it's okay for this. For me, I'm putting this sunset or this, orange moon behind our character for dramatic effect because it gives it that final pop. And then I just erase the color swatch, and there you go. You have your finished piece. Guys, I hope everybody enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun for me to share with you. And I hope that I get a chance to do a little bit more of this with you guys soon. Thanks again, everybody. Peter Pop Art is out.